thank you for joining. It's good to have you here. We want to firstly start by welcoming you to this global community of learners. We very much look forward to telling you about this upcoming program you see here on your screen at the University of California, Berkeley Executive Education. This program is in digital transformation, and we are here to tell you all about it. As we make our way through the session here today, we're going to be learning all about the what and the how of this program. So what is in the curriculum? What is this program all about? What can you expect to learn? You're also going to gain insight into how that curriculum is delivered. So how does the learning take place? What is that day-to-day experience like being a participant here in this program? We're going to illuminate both of those areas for you as we make our way through this session. But once again, very pleased to have each and every one of you joining us. Thank you for being here today. As we make our way through, if you have any questions at all, rest assured you have the support that you need. You'll notice there's a question and answer box here. We invite you to place those questions there in the question and answer box, and we will ensure that you get a response. So don't be shy about letting us know what's on your mind. Just put it right there in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that you get a response. With that, I now warmly invite into the spotlight one of today's keynote speakers. We have with us here Ali Hess. She is the Associate Director of Communications and Marketing here at Berkeley University of California Executive Education. Ali acts as a cultural champion and enthusiastic leader at Berkeley Executive Education. She's passionate about putting people first and delivering an exceptional, engaging, and sustainable people-oriented culture where customers, participants, faculty, staff feel supported, valued, and recognized. She's here to tell us all about Berkeley and what you can expect out of this broader community where you're coming to learn more. So, Ali, thanks again for being here with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Marie, and thank you everyone for joining us in today's webinar on digital transformation. I am Ali Hess, as Marie mentioned, and I'm here this morning, this afternoon, evening, wherever you are, to kick off the webinar and to provide a bit of background on UC Berkeley, the Haas School of Business, and Berkeley Executive Education. So starting off in this slide, you can see the beautiful views of the San Francisco Bay from the UC Berkeley campus. And this tall tower you see in this slide is actually the Campanile or Sather Tower. And if you ever have the opportunity to join us on campus, you can actually take an elevator to the top of this tower where you can enjoy 360-degree breathtaking views of the UC Berkeley campus. And as you can see here, UC Berkeley was founded in 1868 and is actually the flagship institution of the 10 UC research universities, as well as 5 medical centers, and has a student population of over 40,000 students across the undergraduate and graduate degree programs. And next, we're going to look more closely at the Haas School of Business. So Marie can go to the next slide. Great. So within the UC Berkeley campus is the Haas School of Business that you see here, which was founded in 1898 by a woman named Cora Jane Flood, and it's the second oldest business school in North America. And at Haas, there are currently 6 degree programs, as well as Berkeley Executive Education, or Exec Ed, and all 7 of these programs are ranked in the top 10 among public and private universities. And the next few slides, we're going to look more closely at Berkeley Exec Ed and some of our offerings. So Marie, you can go to the next slide, great. So Exec Ed's mission is twofold. The first is really to create a positive impact on business and society. And secondly, to extend the critical work of our faculty beyond the university and into the greater world. So a special thank you to all of you. Your engagement and participation in our programs enable us to achieve this major impact. And next up, we're going to look at some of the offerings that we have at Exec Ed. Great. So starting with our open enrollment portfolio, this offers programs for individuals, focusing on our 4 leadership pillars, which offer a well-rounded leadership education. And these 4 pillars include leadership and communication, entrepreneurship and innovation, strategy and management, and lastly, finance and business acumen. Exec Ed also offers custom programs at Berkeley and around the globe for corporate, government, and university clients who are seeking to address challenges or opportunities in their organizations or industries. And lastly, our online space, which includes this digital transformation program. We now offer several programs in the online space in partnership with Emeritus. So I definitely encourage you to go to our website where you can see more about these upcoming programs. And we're going to look next at another opportunity we have at Exec Ed. So Marie can go to the next slide. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about our Certificate of Business Excellence. We also call this COBE for short. And so if you're interested in pursuing additional programs after your first program with us, you may want to consider pursuing your Certificate of Business Excellence. And this is really an opportunity for you to earn a mark of distinction from a world-class university by pulling together a really customized learning journey with us. And in order to complete your COBE, you'll need to take at least one program from each of these 4 academic pillars that we saw on the previous slide and see here, and at least 17 days of programs with us. And so these online programs like the one today counts for 2 COBE days out of the 17 days, but there are exceptions. So like I said, I encourage you to go to our webpage and look at COBE eligible programs where you can map out your journey more closely. And some of the benefits of COBE, as you see on the right here, one is really the greater access to the Berkeley Haas community. You get a Berkeley Haas forwarding email address, invites to exclusive networking events, a Berkeley Haas access to exclusive distinguished Haas alumni, a 1-year subscription to the online California Management Review. You actually get 15% off your first after all programs after your first program with us, and after completing COBE, 30% off future programs. So that's just some of the benefits. If you visit our COBE page, you can explore more offerings and sign up for a complimentary consultation where you can learn more about our upcoming programs and pulse a learning journey together that meets your individual needs. And lastly, on the next slide, we're going to look at some of our defining leadership principles, which are really the driver behind everything we do at Haas and Exec Ed, and are embedded in the content that you have in your programs, and so important that they're even etched in stone on the Haas courtyard. And these include question the status quo, beyond yourself, confidence without attitude, and student always. And these were codified by former Dean of Haas, Rich Lyons, and you'll see these again and again throughout your program. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it to one of our distinguished faculty for this program, Thomas Lee, who will introduce the faculty and also provide you with more program details. So over to you, Thomas.
Thanks so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are joining today. Let me echo everyone's thanks for your interest in joining the program today to learn a little bit more about digital transformation. My name is Tom Lee. I am one of 3 faculty directors in this program, and I am an instructor in the group Operations and Information Technology Management here at the Haas School of Business, along with my colleague Zsolt Katona, who is the professor of marketing and is the chair, in fact, of the marketing group, and Samir Srivastava, who teaches in the Management of Organizations group. Together, the 3 of us have put together this program and will walk you through the different elements of what it means and how you can leverage digital transformation within your organizations. Now, I myself, as I mentioned, teach in the Operations and Information Technology Management group, and somewhat humorously, I'd only taken 1 business class before I started teaching in a business school. So my background is actually in applied computer science, or at Stanford University, we called it symbolic systems or artificial intelligence. I had studied that along with political science. From my undergraduate studies at Stanford University, I then went to the East Coast and I did my graduate work, my master's and my PhD at MIT. From MIT, I did some work for the US government. I worked as a Beltway bandit, doing consulting for the Defense Department, doing research in data security and network data security. But in between that time, I discovered that I was really more interested in teaching. And so I went on to teach first at the Wharton School of Business on the East Coast, and then had an opportunity to come to UC Berkeley. And so leaped at that opportunity and have been at UC Berkeley now for well over a decade. My own research is in the area of text and sequence mining, and I apply text and sequence mining to identify and screen opportunities for new product and service design. Now, coming from the operations side, what I tend to focus on are operational kinds of applications. Whether you think of it in terms of manufacturing, whether you think of it in terms of service delivery, I say that somewhat humorously because by contrast, my colleague Zsolt Katona, who teaches in the marketing group, likes to talk about how important marketing is in terms of organizations. And likewise, Professor Srivastava or Samir will like to talk about how important culture is within the organization. And so you'll see us go back and forth over the course of the term together, trying to elevate different parts of the organization, but ultimately for you to recognize how important each of these pillars are in driving successful digital transformation in the organization. Next, please. Next slide, please. So what I hope to do over the next several minutes is give you more insight into the program that we've designed around digital transformation. Rather than outlining each of the elements to you, what we're going to do is walk step by step through each of the 8 modules in the course so you have a better understanding of the arc of the learning journey. Next slide, please. To begin with, regardless of where you are joining this webinar from, we have the perhaps unenviable experience of a shared lifetime, so to say, of something that no other generation has ever experienced. And more importantly, we experience this all at the exact same time. Now, of course, we understood and the impacts of COVID-19 may have fell on each of us in different ways, depending upon where in the world we sit, depending upon what in the world we are engaged in, depending upon our community. But it is certainly true that we all felt what it meant to universally experience COVID-19. And the reason why this is so interesting is it provides for us a shared backdrop to discuss what digital transformation really looks like. Because regardless of where we lived, we had an opportunity to observe how digital and digital technologies changed the way that people interact with one another, the way that we both physically and the way that we physically communicate with one another, but also and physically interact with one another, but the way that the way that we do our work, the way that we live, the way that we consume, the way that we gather information. And so COVID-19, now our first module is not really about COVID-19, but what COVID-19 allows us to do is to think systematically about what exactly digital transformation really is. And so in module 1, what we will do is introduce to you a set of frameworks that will help you understand the way that we define digital transformation and the process that you will go through in order to enable digital transformation within your organization. So in module 1, expect us to introduce a series of frameworks that we will then revisit over the remaining 7 modules of the course. So in module 1, we deliver these frameworks and use that as a structure that we will continue to build upon over the remaining 7 modules. Next slide, please. In module 2, we speak in part around opportunities for digital transformation because we will look at how digital transformation has impacted many different industries. But we will do that in the context of experimental design. Because a question that many people ask as they embark on their digital transformation journey would be, how do we know whether we're achieving any impact whatsoever? Now, the gold standard for any sort of impact analysis is, of course, the randomized controlled trial. Many of you who may come from a digital background may be familiar with what is sometimes called an A/B test. And of course, it's wonderful if we work in an environment where A/B testing or randomized testing is an option. However, many of us come from contexts and environments where for any number of reasons, whether they are ethical reasons, whether they are policy reasons, whether they are simply logistical reasons, randomized controlled trials are somewhat beyond us. It's difficult for us to implement randomized controlled trials, which leave us wondering, how are we supposed to measure impact? Well, it just so turns out that in 2021, the Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to 3 scholars precisely for their research on answering that question. How do we approach or approximate the analytical power of randomized controlled trials when we may not have the opportunity to put those in place? And so in module 2, we will look at randomized controlled trials or A/B tests, but then we'll back away from some of the strong assumptions behind A/B tests, and we'll look at other test designs. We'll talk about the notion of difference in differences designs, and we'll look at how you can implement difference in differences, measure impacts in contexts where we may not have the opportunity to fully randomize, and how do we find an external control. We'll take a look at what are called regression discontinuity designs and ask ourselves what happens, for example, when time becomes a running variable and we're essentially looking at something like a pre and post. And so if that terminology made absolutely no sense to you, or if you're not familiar at all, even with randomized controlled trials, that's great, because that's what module 2 is about. We're going to spend time talking about how we measure the impact of digital transformation, but we will do it in the context of digital transformations in many different kinds of industries. Next slide, please. In module 3, we begin to dive deep into the underlying frameworks for what we describe. What does digital transformation mean? And one of the frameworks that we will deliver over the arc of the course has to do with the 3 fundamental pillars of digital transformation. The idea that digital transformation is built on top of data. Now, of course, many of you are familiar with or think of digital transformation as synonymous with technology. We're going to take a step back from the technology, and we will submit to you that digital transformation is less about the technology and fundamentally about the data that technology is meant to capture or meant to analyze. And so we will talk in module 3 about the architecture of what digital transformation means and how digital transformation is built fundamentally on top of data. We'll talk about the sources of data. We'll talk about how we organize data, the challenges for integrating data from many different of those sources, and what it means to leverage data across many of the emerging technologies. So module 3 is all about that first pillar, that foundation for digital transformation, which is data itself. Next slide, please. In module 4, we'll look at the second pillar of digital transformation. This idea that digital transformation is, again, not just about data, but it is fundamentally about changing the way that you do business. As mentioned earlier, when we talked about the impact of COVID on you and on your organization, wherever you happen to be, you had to change the way that you work, the way that you communicate, the way that you act. And so fundamentally, digital transformation is about a process change. And so in module 4, we'll talk about the central role of processes in digital transformation. And in a somewhat reductive sense, we will also spend time talking about the process of digital transformation itself, what steps you need to go through in order to change the processes by which you perform. And so we'll look at both quantitative and qualitative methods for combining data in defining processes and that process of change itself. Next slide, please. Now in module 5, we're going to take a step back from that framework of digital transformation, and we'll ask, once I put digital transformation in place, how am I supposed to capture the value of the digital transformation itself? And in that context, module 5 is going to describe a number of different business models that are enabled by digital transformation. And if not the business model that's exclusively in a digital context, how does digital impact the business models that you already have in place? We'll talk about things like network effects. We'll talk about multi-sided markets, dynamic pricing, what many of you are familiar with in terms of subscription-based economies. And so we'll talk about all of these, both uniquely digital business models and how for existing business models, digital impacts those models that you already have in place. Next slide, please. In module 6, we return to this framework of digital transformation. We talked about the pillar of data. We talked about the pillar of process. And that third pillar, the stool upon which we will build digital transformation, is people. Because even though we think about digital transformation in terms of data and technology, we remember that digital is really fundamentally changing the way that we work. And what the critical pronoun there would be the we. It is you as an individual, all of your colleagues as stakeholders in the digital transformation journey. Because when you change the way that people do their work, what you are doing is changing or impacting all of those stakeholders, whether those stakeholders are internal to your organization, whether you look downstream in the value chain and think of those stakeholders as your customers, whether you look upstream in the value chain and think of those stakeholders as your partners. It is undeniable that digital transformation is impacting individuals and impacting organizations. And so successful digital transformation will require you to understand the impacts of your transformations on all of those stakeholders. And it is incumbent on you as a leader within your organization to manage the cultural shifts, to manage the change in the way that those individuals will interact and organize in order to achieve their digital transformation and for you to achieve your digital transformation goals. Next slide, please. Module 7 then asks, well, it is one thing for us, for you as an individual, it is one thing for your organization to try and implement digital transformation. But of course, we understand that digital transformation is not a bubble. Your organization exists within the wider and broader context of society. And so it is important for successful digital transformation to recognize not only that entire value chain and all of the stakeholders, but it's important to recognize the context in which our transformation is situated. In Module 7, we'll talk about many of the public policy implications of what digital transformation means. We'll talk about things like the privacy legislation that is rolling out across the world, whether it's GDPR in Europe. California itself, the University of California, Berkeley is here in the state of California, and we have our own data protection rules. In addition, we'll talk about some data security issues, because whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Asia, whether we're talking about the Middle East and Europe, in Latin America, we recognize that different countries and different nationalities are also introducing security constraints or security policies that will impact all of the organizations that attempt to digitize. And so what that means, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for you as a leader in your organization trying to trying to implement digital transformation? And so we need to understand what the policy landscape looks like, how that policy landscape is changing, and what the implications of those changes have for our ability to leverage data, our ability to change process, and our ability to impact the stakeholders within our value chains. Stepping away from the formal policy or the letter of the laws, so to say, we also need to think about the ethical implications. Even if there is no policy, some formal policy, even though governments may not yet have passed explicit laws around digital transformation or in certain aspects of digital transformation, it is incumbent to us as ethical actors to be aware of some of these implications that will ripple out into society. So we will also take the opportunity in Module 7 to talk about concepts like algorithmic bias. So even if the law does not require us to take certain steps, what are the implications of the transformations that we put in place? And so how do we think about biases? And here we don't necessarily think about some of the political uses of the word bias, but more in a statistical sense. How do we remain unbiased in the way that we leverage our data and the way that we learn from our data? Next slide, please. In Module 8, we're going to tie all of the pieces of our course together. We will return to the basic frameworks that we've used to build up digital transformation. For example, I've spoken today about those 3 pillars: data, process, and people. We'll come back to data process and people, but we'll come back to all of the frameworks that we've introduced throughout the learning journey. And we'll ask ourselves, how do we put all of those pieces in place? And what does successful digital transformation look like? We'll take a look at different organizations that have successfully transformed digitally. And we will use those organizations and learn from not only the way that they measured their impacts or their outcomes. We'll revisit in module 2, we had talked about designing experiments to measure impact. We'll take a look at some of the metrics that those organizations used. Metrics not only to measure impact, but more importantly, to take a step backwards and ask, how do you manage the digital transformation process? In particular, how do you build a portfolio of opportunities? And how do you manage that portfolio of opportunities? How do you prioritize the different digital transformation initiatives within your organization? All of that will take place in module 8. And then what we'll do is take the final words to look forward, look ahead into the future and ask, what are some of the emerging trends that will impact you and your organization? Perhaps not just you and your organization, but your entire industry, perhaps society at large. And so what are those future trends and how do we fit those trends into our digital transformation frameworks? Next slide, please. And so with that in mind, let me turn things back over to Marie, where we're going to talk about your learning experience through the online platform.
Thank you so much, Professor Lee, for being here with us today and for your generosity in sharing your knowledge and your insights here, as well as for designing this course itself. So we so appreciate being able to learn directly from you about this program and how it's been designed. And thank you for that handoff. We're going to step over and talk a little bit about the learning experience, but we're going to hand the spotlight back to Professor Lee here in a moment. So we invite you to stay with us. We're going to hear final words of wisdom, words of advice from our course professor here towards the end of our session. But just to help illuminate some of the learning experience for you, we wanted to march through and give you that detailed overview of what you can expect from a day-to-day experience here in the program. You'll see a summary here on your slide. The learning platform that we use is a user-friendly platform. It's available from a mobile device or a tablet 24/7 on the go. So it's a chance for you to dive into the content in a way that's highly convenient as well as highly interactive. So those are really the two words that describe the learning experience here. You're going to have a lot of opportunity for engagement and interaction with the content. So you're not simply learning themes and methodologies and frameworks, but you're really being challenged to roll up your sleeve and tinker with your learning and really fully immerse yourself in the process of bringing that learning to life in real world application scenarios. And so that's what this course is going to help you to do, that interactive component. And you also have the convenient factor. You're able to access most of the platform material asynchronously around a schedule that works for you. And what that looks like in real time, at the beginning of each of these weeks, a set of content is released. That content starts with on-demand video lectures. These are your course faculty, very much like today's session, describing the core concepts. These are brief 5 to 7 minute video clips. You can watch them as many times as you need to around a schedule that works for you. They're on demand and available in the platform for you. After you step away from the learning, you're sort of grasping onto these frameworks, these methodologies, and these clips. You then are able to go through the remaining set of content here around a schedule that works for you within that week. This content is, contains assignments, simulation, knowledge checks, role play exercises, discussion boards with your peers, a lot of opportunity for you to take that learning into a place of real world application, both within the learning environment and then within your professions. So this program was designed to be a fully immersive learning environment. Unlike a traditional classroom, there's, a certain number of seats in the room, certain number of minutes to get through a certain set of curriculum. We're able to break down those barriers in space and time here in this program and offer the material to you in an on-demand, fully immersive environment where you really learn at your own pace as you go and you make practical use application every step of the way. All this while building relationships across many different layers of teaching and learning here. You have yourself as an individual learner drawing on these themes and really helping to stay current and stay relevant in your industry. A layer beyond you, you have your peers who you're learning together with and from. You're going to see these concepts coming to life in your own organization, in your own industry, and in your own professional role. But with that peer-to-peer engagement, you're going to have an opportunity not only to broaden your professional network and gain peers and colleagues from across the globe, but also to learn from one another, to see these same themes and concepts coming to life in other geographies and other industries, and with other challenges and other professional roles. So you get that broadened scope of understanding, that tapestry of ideas, to add a lot of enrichment and value to that overall scope of learning. A layer beyond your peers, you have your learning facilitators, and we're going to go a little bit more detail on the next slide about your learning facilitators, but these are experts who come into this program and serve as your day-to-day teaching guides. So these industry experts at the forefront of their field here helping to support your learning every step of the way. You're getting individualized feedback on your assignments and a lot of opportunity for learning support. A layer beyond that, your course faculty who you're hearing from today, and then of course this broader community here at UC Berkeley Executive Education. So there's a lot in store in terms of building those relationships and engaging with the content, not simply learning the content in a static environment like watching a video or reading a book, but really engaging with the material, bringing it to life and enhancing that learning. So we call this a pedagogical approach. We call it bite-sized learning, but really what it is deep skills building. And that's what this course is designed to help you to do, to really take away these tangible skills and put them into practice in real time. Most of the learning components here, as mentioned, are asynchronous. You can design your own schedule, but there are some live components as well, where you're able to come together and learn directly from Berkeley faculty, as well as from your learning facilitators through office hours. These are all recorded, much like today's session, and posted in the platform after the live event. So you'll have that simulated experience available for the remainder of your time in the program. Even if you miss a live session, you can go back in and catch up on anything you may have missed. So again, highly convenient, highly interactive. Those subject matter experts, those learning facilitators, they're such a critical part of your learning. We wanted to devote an entire slide to introducing you to this learning element in the course. Your learning facilitators, as mentioned, are industry experts. They know this topic well, and they're here to help support your learning and also provide a reciprocal learning environment. So when you dive into this course, if you discover a niche area of interest you'd like to explore further, or if you'd like additional resources about a certain topic, you can come in, you can ask your learning facilitators, you can come to office hours, you can get help and support with your assignments. The learning facilitators allow you to have a reciprocal learning environment where you are the driver of your learning experience, and you can really reach out and get the supports that you need for a customized and individualized learning journey through this course. So they're here to answer your questions. They're going to give you individualized feedback on your assignments. They're on the discussion boards with you and your peers, helping to push your thinking and drive engagement. And they add a huge element to your overall learning as your number one person and line of resource to go to for any questions or any support with your assignments. So a lot in store as you think about those relationships that you're building. You're broadening out your professional network. You're gaining peers and colleagues from across the globe. You're learning these topics in a fully immersive way that allows you to make practical use application. And all of this you have in store here for this program as you think about expanding your knowledge and really taking the time to advance your lifelong learning journey. So we want to thank you for your interest in this program. You can see in summary here, the program is about 4 to 6 hours per week. So as you're looking ahead at your schedule, you're able to identify the best 4 to 6 hours that work for you in your time zone. So we designed the schedule to be convenient. You can, within that week, you can make your own schedule. So you'll be able to choose that time that works for you that you can really devote to your learning here in the program. Again, the program contains assignments, quizzes, peer discussions, webinars, all of this aimed at helping to strengthen that overall learning and ensure that you have everything that you need in order to make practical application. The participants who come from this program are diverse from all regions of the globe, from all different industry backgrounds, and many different years of professional experience. You'll see here on your screen that some of the industries represented here in this course are banking and financial services, IT services, consulting, IT products, the vast majority here making up that sort of other category. So a very diverse group in terms of the different sectors and industries that you're representing, and across the span of work experience. So you're going to have folks in your cohort who are just starting out, who have that fresh perspective. You're going to have mid-career professionals who are really driving innovations, who are driving change and churning those engines. You're going to have executive C-suite level professionals who are really setting for strategic visions for their organization, all coming together to really learn shoulder to shoulder, and again, strengthen that overall learning for the cohort. We've also provided here for you some feedback from recent participants, and we won't read these off to you word for word, but we are going to provide you with copies of the slides here. You'll see there's a handout that you can download here, and you can come back through and take a look at some of these participant testimonials. The themes that you're going to see come to life here, the case study examples, the real use application, and the ability to really engage with the content, not simply digest or learn the content, but really roll up your sleeves and immerse yourself in the learning. And so, those take place through a variety of different ways, and you'll see many of our participants sort of describing the ways in which that energy and that enthusiasm has helped support their learning. So we invite you to come back and take a look at these testimonials. After the session here today, we want to invite you to get connected with a program advisor. If you go over to the course website, and you'll see there's a link there on your screen. And if you open the chat box, you'll see there's a link in the chat as well. It'll route you right on over to that course website, where you can schedule one click away a advising conversation with an advisor who can tell you everything you need to know about this program. If you have any logistical questions about dates or times and scheduling, when are those faculty office hours? What is the course start date? Is there another run in the future? They can help support you with all of those questions. Any questions related to the registration and enrollment process, they can support you with those as well as you seek to prepare to begin this program. So go right on over to that course website, schedule a time to meet with an advisor. You can also begin the application process from the website, and you'll also have an opportunity to download the full course brochure. And that's everything that we've described here and more. It's a beautifully designed brochure that gives you that comprehensive scope of what you can expect here in the program. So if you haven't done so, grab that link out of the chat box. You'll see it on your screen as well. Head on over to the course website, take a look, and let us know if you need any support. And we are here. We want to make sure that that high level of relationship building and support begins right here today with this session. So with that, thank you all again for joining. I'm going to invite our professor, Professor Lee, back into the frame here. So firstly, no two cohorts are alike, and we're constantly thinking about ways that we can improve. So Professor Lee, could you speak a little bit, the modules, how they're being updated and how we're sort of readdressing and going back to the content to stay current? Can you talk a little bit about what kind of updates might be expected here in the future?
Or just what updates have been made. So the short story is I cannot remember exactly what has been updated when. You are correct that there are some modules. You'll remember that most of Module 1 is really about the frameworks that we will use to define the arc of the course, and the frameworks that we will revisit and build up over the entire arc of the course. And so in some sense, those frameworks don't change. And that's why that's sort of the basics or the grounding. And that's why the videos that are building up that framework have not changed. But throughout the entire course itself, you'll see that we've updated different pieces. Of course, just today, I had talked about COVID. And of course, in 2018, COVID did not exist. And so you'll see that in different threads for different parts of the course, as technology has evolved. For example, when we talk about the policy landscape has changed. And so those different modules have evolved. And as the technology changes, or as our understanding changes, we've taken the opportunity, and that's what's great about a course like this, taken the opportunity to record new modules that get substituted in. And that happens sort of throughout the course. I'll be honest and say I cannot remember which modules and which parts of which modules have the have updates. But for example, just this past summer, I talked about the way we define experiments. And so that Nobel Prize that I referenced was awarded in 2021. And so certainly, again, some of that work, there's a long history to that work, of course, but we re-recorded those modules, or parts of those modules, excuse me, this summer. Some of the modules, or some of the videos having to do with data, for example, we were also re-recording this summer. And that's in module 3. And so it's just it's not an entire piece that was redone. There are different fragments that fit within each of the modules that have been redone or been updated.
And that's right. And I'd say, just adding to that, that's one of the ways in which, this program really is designed to stay relevant, to stay current. This is a dynamic course. It's a reciprocal learning environment. You're bringing in your knowledge, your experience, your challenges, and you're really gaining that individualized support. It's a environment, a learning environment that you're a part of building as you go through. So coming to office hours, live faculty webinars, all of these are implemented as a way of really helping to engage with the latest and most current technologies throughout your time in the program. This is not a massive open online course or a MOOC you may have heard, MOOC. This is a highly specialized program, one in which you're going to get that individualized touch, and it's going to be relevant and current. So that's something you can expect here out of this program as well. What we know is that the World Economic Forum says that the skills of today to stay relevant in the modern workforce is about 5 years. The half-life of skills is about 5 years, meaning that in 5 years from now, the skills it takes us to be successful now will be obsolete or phasing out. So really thinking about your lifelong journey over the career span and staying relevant. And we know the half-life of technical skills is about 2.5 years. So all the more reason to really be engaging in this lifelong learning pathway through courses such as this one here. So really exciting and really glad to have this available. Along those lines, that sort of career building, we have an anonymous attendee asking about, is this really the right program for someone who's looking to make a career shift? So it looks like this is someone who's working in the IT services industry, but maybe feels a little bit disconnected from all of the digital transformation concepts ahead. Sort of the landscape is changing so rapidly, and they want to be a little bit more close to and engaged with that digital pathway. Is this course going to give them the skills that they need? Professor Lee, what would you say in answer to that?
That's a great question. And I want to be clear here. This is not a technology course. So we're not going to dive into the nuts and the bolts of what it means to implement a particular algorithm, or what it means to deploy a particular drone in a particular context. We are also not going to do sort of reviews of different kinds of technologies or benchmark different software. What we will do is provide you with the higher level, as a leader within your organization, define the way to think about strategy and the way to think about a path forward for your organization. And so in that sense, I think this is a very good course, a very good introductory course for someone who is thinking about career shifting, and in particular, shifting into a role that allows them to leverage digital, or shifting into a role that would allow them to help lead or participate in the digital transformation, whether it's in their industry, broadly speaking, or within their own individual firm. We're also going to, because we will draw upon examples from across many different kinds of industries, this is also an opportunity for someone that's looking to jump industry. And so we'll give you, and again, I'm not going to pretend that it's a comprehensive sort of overview of multiple industries, but hopefully what it will do is give you some hints into looking cross industry. What are some of the connections? Where and how does digital allow you to apply a common point of leverage across different industries? And so if you're interested in industry shifting, this allows you to use digital as a foundation for, hey, look, this is how I've developed transformation within my industry. These are the common points that allow me to successfully transition into a different industry by carrying my digital transformation skills over. So in that sense, I think this is a very good course for someone who is interested in the career shift, whether it's within their own firm whether it's within their own industry or whether that shift involves jumping industries into sort of a parallel role.
Thank you so much, Professor Lee, again, for sharing your generous insights here today. We've reached the end of our question queue here, so we're going to be closing out the session here shortly. We invite you to get connected with an advisor. If you haven't done so already, you'll see in the chat box there's a link over to the course website. There's also an email address there. You'll see that listed, berkeley@emeritus.org. You can let us know if you need any support through email, through scheduling an appointment with an advisor, or by joining the program and getting connected with your teaching team just around the corner. There's a lot in store. We hope you'll join us. Thank you again, Professor Lee. Any final words of wisdom, words of advice that you'd like to leave us with as we close out the session here today?
Thanks again, Marie. I would just say that I teach in this program, that Zsolt and Samir teach in this program because we leverage digital in our research. We teach it to our full-time students, and we have the privilege of teaching in an environment like this to executives from around the world like yourselves. We genuinely believe in the power of digital and digital transformation. Whether you choose to embark on your digital transformation journey with UC Berkeley and Berkeley Executive Education, whether you look to other programs, rather than trying to push just our program, I think we really think of ourselves as advocates for the power of digital. And so we would really encourage you to pursue opportunities for digital transformation within your organization, whether you do it with us at UC Berkeley, whether you look elsewhere, whether you continue to sift through your sort of professional or industry organizations and trade publications. Just do pursue digital, because digital is impacting, whether you recognize it immediately or not, it's impacting you and your organizations today. And while many people do think of digital transformation as fundamentally a technology shift, the last word that I'll leave you with is this firm belief that we have at UC Berkeley, and we teach it not just the three of us, the faculty that are a part of this course, but across the university. We really fundamentally believe that digital is really about those three pillars. It's not about the technology per se, but it's about data, it's about processes, and it's about people. And you will find those three pillars echoed in all of the curriculum, whether it's labeled digital transformation or not, across the UC Berkeley campus. That's why we welcome you to join us in this program. But again, even if you look elsewhere, no matter where you go, think about digital, think about its impact on you and your organizations, and think about it through the lens of those three pillars of data, process, and people. Thanks very much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing about your journey, whether it's done with us or wherever you happen to be.
And thank you again, Professor Lee. Those were great words to sign off on here, very inspiring, and certainly an honor to learn from you here today about this topic and about this program. Thank you for putting it together. From all of you, for all of you from around the globe who have joined in here today, thank you again for joining and for being here with us. We hope that you will come back and see us in the program, but for now, we are going to be signing off with a heartfelt good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day to all of you from around the globe. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you back soon. Bye-bye.